Chapter 3776. Xian was just about to make his move. Yuzun's complacent voice rang out, "Don't try to resist. If this palm doesn't land on you, then your beloved woman will bear it for you." Xian's figure was completely rooted to the ground. Dark venerable. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she gritted her teeth and roared out Yuzun's name. "Xian, don't bother about me. I want to see if he really dares to make a move against me." She bet that he wouldn't dare. Once he made a move, Xian would not hesitate to make his move. The Nether Prime could at most only use her to delay the time of this battle. But, bang, that palm landed squarely on Xian's shoulder. Xian was forced to retreat several steps. When he regained his balance, the corner of his lips was slightly pale and a trace of blood flowed out. That shade of red pierced Yiqing Luo's eyes. That palm landed on Xian's body. It was like a blow to her heart. His heart felt like it was being torn apart. A surge of blood qi kept surging in his chest, as if it would gush out from his throat at any moment. It was all because of her. It was all because of her. That was why Xian was controlled by others. He already had a foolproof plan in his mind. She was almost 80% sure that the Dark Lord wouldn't dare to make a move against her. But Xian cared about her. Because he cared. He dared not gamble with her. Therefore he would rather bear this palm strike himself. Xian. Looking at Xian who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, Yiqing Luo's voice was choked. She looked at Xian. Tears welled up in his eyes. The blood that was surging in his chest. It made her throat feel fishy and sweet. Xian. She had clearly instructed him not to let himself get hurt for her sake. But now it was for her. He endured the Dark Lord's humiliation. Her Xian. How could he allow others to humiliate him? Xian smirked at her. His smile was very faint. However, the gentleness and love in his eyes were still as deep as ever. This smile made Yiqing Luo's eyelashes wet with a layer of mist. Her drooping black hair covered her eyes, which were gradually turning red. The aura on his body was also gradually changing. It was a very subtle change. Xian. This is the price to pay for having a soft spot. Yuzun laughed in satisfaction. Looking at Xian's swaying body, he felt extremely carefree in his heart. His heart was filled with the satisfaction of injuring and humiliating Xian. He didn't notice the changes that were happening to the woman he was holding. To be more precise, to Yuzun. This woman was an ant that he could strangle to death with a flick of his finger. He did not care about her at all, so why would he pay attention to her changes? This woman is really important to you. It was not in vain that I spent so much effort to pull her into the space of your consciousness. Xian. There's more exciting things waiting for you next. You Venerable raised his palm. A majestic and tyrannical profound energy, like a hurricane whirlpool, surged in his palm. Along with the Nether Prime's wild laughter. The hurricane grew fiercer and fiercer. The aura of the entire space changed. The hurricane rose abruptly and the vast starry sky in the space seemed to be swept along with the hurricane. This palm, his target, was Xian's chest. As long as this palm landed. If Xian didn't die, he would be crippled. When Xian had no way to retaliate, he would torture Yiqing Luo bit by bit in front of Xian. Chapter 3777. In his mind, it was as though he had already sketched out a beautiful picture of the future. Revered Lord gave a sinister smile as his eyes were filled with complacency and murderous intent. That palm was aimed directly at Xian's chest as it chopped downwards. Xian's expression changed slightly. When that palm landed, his muscles tensed up. He naturally could tell what Revered Lord was planning. Revered Lord's palm was aimed at the weakest part of his body. As long as he received this palm, his 5 viscera and 6 bowels would probably be severely injured. Earlier, when he was in the spirit-devouring array, the injuries to his soul would probably be dragged out. By then, Xian's eyes turned colder and colder. His brain was working quickly. His injuries were nothing. But if he lost his battle power, Revered Lord would absolutely not keep his promise. He must ensure Lil Luo's safety before he was heavily injured. The violent and ferocious palm filled with murderous intent was already pressing downwards. A glint flashed past Xian's eyes. He didn't evade this palm. Instead he faced this palm and stretched out his hand towards the direction where Revered Lord was holding onto Yiqing Luo. Revered Lord was shocked by Zhou Xian's sudden action. Was he crazy? He was prepared to use his own body to forcefully snatch Yiqing Luo from his hands. Revered Lord couldn't understand Zhou Xian's actions. The palm had already landed. If he stuffed Yiqing Luo behind him and avoided Zhou Xian's outstretched hand, that palm which he struck out would definitely be deflected. If this palm was deflected, he would lose control of Zhou Xian. That would give Zhou Xian a chance to turn things around. He couldn't avoid it. Revered Lord's gaze was sinister as his murderous aura intensified. What an infatuated person. I'll fulfill your wish. He wanted to see how Zhou Xian was going to protect Yiqing Luo after being hit by this palm. Everything would proceed according to his plans. The murderous aura in Revered Lord's eyes became more and more intense. His palm was like a hot knife cutting through butter, and his profound energy was like a surging flood. Even the air was intimidated by this energy, and there were traces of electric currents flickering in the air. Boom! A huge explosion reverberated through the entire space. It was accompanied by a shrill scream. But this miserable shriek was not Zhou Xian's voice. Instead, the Nether Prime's face was pale, beads of cold sweat the size of beans rolling down from his forehead. The intense pain eroded his body and mind. It was as if something was rampaging in his body. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels and even all the bones in his body were smashed to pieces. He opened his mouth in pain and howled miserably. His widened eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. What was going on? Why was everything not going in the direction he had envisioned? Yuzun twisted his head in pain. The tearing pain made him break out in cold sweat. His gaze slowly landed on the source of the pain. His hand was still maintaining the motion of swinging his palm downwards. It was just a finger's distance away from Zhou Xian. But he couldn't swing that palm down for a long time. This was because a slender white hand had grabbed his wrist. All of his strength was locked in that small slender white hand. He wanted to move. However, he was suppressed by that small hand and was unable to move at all. From the strength of that small hand which was gripping his wrist, wave after wave of berserk profound energy followed his wrist and rushed into his body. Like a sharp blade. Chapter 3778. But what shocked him the most was, this slender hand actually belonged to that woman whom he totally disregarded and treated as a hostage, Yiqing Luo. When did she break free from his restraint? And when did she clasp his wrist? He totally didn't feel anything at all. He only knew that at the moment when his palm was about to land on Zhou Xian's chest, turning him into a cripple completely, his wrist was already clasped by Yiqing Luo. Immediately following that, a violent surge of profound energy pressed against his internal organs. And there was a sharp blade cutting his heart. Traces of profound energy probing towards his profound jade heart. And he totally had no room to resist at all. This was impossible. How could she possibly have such a powerful energy? If there was such a powerful energy, how could he possibly not sense it? Could it be Zhou Xian's doing? Yuzun, who was in extreme pain, stared fiercely at Zhou Xian. But he saw Zhou Xian's expression was slightly stunned as his brows creased tightly, looking at Yiqing Luo in bewilderment. As though he was shocked by the energy that Yiqing Luo had unleashed. "Why, man, you dare to touch him?" The young lady's cold voice seemed to be covered with frost. A pair of blood-red eyes surged with ice-cold monstrous waves. Her 5 fingers suddenly tightened. "It's this hand that injured my man." A gotcha sound was heard. Yuzun's right hand was broken by Yiqing Luo barehandedly. Yiqing Luo raised her leg and kicked Yuzun's chest fiercely. Yuzun flew backwards, falling under the vast starry sky. He cried out in pain, hugging his broken arm as he rolled around. Blood kept seeping out, dyeing his robe red. The young lady stood in the air. Her flamboyant red robe was like a dazzling poppy, flamboyant and eye-catching. The strong wind danced wildly, blowing against her fine black hair. The young lady's face was devastatingly beautiful, her brows were sharp and stern. Her enchanting eyes were filled with the world's coldest ice. As though it was just a glance. Then it would be frozen into frost. Flamboyant, peerlessly beautiful. Lil Luo Zhou Xian stared intently at Yiqing Luo as his peach blossom eyes sparkled. the girl in front of him, just like his little Luo heir. However, there seemed to be something different. It was a breathtaking aura. Even he felt a trace of pressure. Perhaps it heard his voice. The girl slowly glanced over. At this moment, her beautiful face, which could topple cities, seemed to melt like snow. Her long and narrow eyes, which were dyed red, seemed to be dotted with a myriad of spring waters like peach blossoms. She smiled at him. Her smile was beautiful and captivating. Her red eyes were enchanting and charming. Zhou Xian's brows gradually softened. This was his little Luo heir. No matter what her current situation was. However, her soul was still Lil Luo. You did it on purpose. You did it on purpose. The Nether Prime's voice broke the sweetness between the two of them. He staggered to his feet. He was in an extremely sorry state. He stared deadly at Yiqing Luo as though he wanted to slice her into 1,000 pieces. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted back onto Yuzun. The coldness and contempt in his eyes were extremely clear. As though he was mocking Yuzun for overestimating his own ability. She leapt upwards. The fiery red long robe was like a raging fire, blossoming brilliantly in the sky, weaving streaks of colorful clouds. A majestic aura, as though it could stir the 9 heavens, burst forth from her body. So powerful that. Chapter 3779. Yu Venerable's pupils constricted as disbelief and fear surged beneath his eyes. You're not Yiqing Luo. The young lady's pink lips curled slightly as she breathed out a light breath from her nose. Under those cold, sharp, charming eyes, her gaze was cold, noble and breathtaking. Even Yu Venerable, who was used to killing. When he met the sharp, cold and frost-like eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. His throat couldn't help but tighten as his heart felt as though it was being strangled tightly by something. Yu Venerable's heart thumped hard. His heart kept sinking. What was going on? The young lady in front of him still looked the same. But her entire person had undergone an earth-shattering change. If it was in the past when he looked at Yiqing Luo, he only felt that this young lady had a peerless beauty, but her ability was meager. As long as he moved his finger, he would be able to pull her in easily. But now, the aura that Yiqing Luo released and the boundless profound energy that she was emitting, all these showed her extraordinariness. Especially in front of the young lady's chest, there seemed to be a ball of blazing flame. The enchanting red glow pierced Yu Venerable's eyes. Even though he couldn't see clearly the thing under the flame, Yu Venerable was very clear. That was the young lady's profound jade heart which was releasing its power. It could be said. The current Yiqing Luo. She was totally a strong existence who was on par with him, or even Zhou Xian. He had actually misjudged her. This young lady had concealed herself too well. Yu Venerable. The young lady's clear voice was like an orchid in an empty valley, extremely pleasing to the ears. But that voice was mixed with a chilly intent, making one feel a chill down one's spine. Yu Venerable's heart thumped fiercely again. His heart felt as though it was going to jump out from his throat. He clenched his teeth tightly as he suppressed the heavy pressure in his heart. His vicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Zhou Xian. He had already suffered a lot. Moreover, he had long heard that Zhou Xian was injured and his ability was not even half of his peak. He thought that he could take advantage of the situation to stop Zhou Xian. To seek back all the humiliation that he had suffered from Zhou Xian. But he had not expected that even the injured Zhou Xian. He was also not Zhou Xian's opponent. Now with the addition of Yiqing Luo, who he couldn't see through at all. If he didn't seize the opportunity to kill one of them, he would definitely die. Today he was most likely doomed. The murderous intent in the Nether Prime's eyes instantly surged intensely. All the dark force in his body was entangled crazily. However, in the face of Lord Yu's vigilance, Yiqing Luo, who had made up her mind to go all out, didn't even bat an eyelid. Her long and narrow eyes were overflowing with light, like the twinkling of stars. His eyes were filled with calmness and indifference. He was neither happy nor angry, neither arrogant nor rash. He was emotionless. She said, "There's no need to look at Zhou Xian. I can deal with you alone." She smiled sweetly and her smile was incomparably beautiful. However, there was not a trace of warmth in the depths of her eyes. She lifted her fair and slender hand slowly. A streak of lightning-like flowing light danced in her palm. From time to time there would be crackling sounds. when Yuzun's vision came into contact with the electric current running around in Yiqing Luo's palm. He staggered back a few steps as if he had been frightened. Thunderclap incantation. This power. Don't tell me you are. His face alternated between pale white and steely green. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Chapter 3780. Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly as she smiled sweetly. Oh? So you know what this is? Her 5 fingers moved slightly. The flickering electric current started to move faster and faster. The electric current crackled as though it was dipped in poison, icy cold and sinister. She slowly raised her hand. The electric ball in her hand covered the smile on her face. But it couldn't conceal the cold, teasing glint in her eyes. Only a dead person can keep a secret, then. I can only kill you. Her tone was indifferent, carrying an irresistible dignity. The murderous intent in her words made Yuzun awaken from his stupor. He pursed his lips tightly as his twisted face was half unwillingness and half astonishment. Suddenly he pounced towards Yiqing Luo. Monstrous profound energy gathered around his body. That right hand which was broken by Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out towards her. A black airflow revolved around his broken arm. A piece of white bone suddenly popped out from the broken arm. The tip of the bone was extremely sharp, like a sharp blade, giving off a faint cold glint. On the white bone there was a sinister qi revolving around it. Yiqing Luo, stop acting mysterious. I'd like to see what kind of waves an ant like you can stir up. Yuzun gritted his teeth as he gave a low growl. He didn't believe that Yiqing Luo had suddenly undergone such a huge change. An ant was an ant. How could he possibly die in the hands of an ant? Lil Luo, Although Zhou Xian knew about Yiqing Luo's current condition, he didn't need to worry. But when he saw Yuzun's attack nearing, his body's instincts had already driven him to fly towards Yiqing Luo. His long arms stretched out as he pulled the young lady into his embrace. With a backhand he struck out a palm in an attempt to block Yuzun's attack. But before he could even raise his hand, the girl's soft little hand had already rested on his arm, and she slowly pressed his hand down. Tightly, the young lady's one hand encircled his waist. The other hand, which was holding the electric ball, moved slightly. The electric ball in her hand turned into a bolt of lightning as it smashed down from Yuzun's head. The electric current revolved around Yuzun's body. Lightning flashed, emitting sizzling sounds. The electric current wrapped around the dark prime, causing his entire body to be numb and charred. He fell to the ground, his limbs twitching. The electric current on his body was still faintly visible. Nobody appreciated the nether prime's miserable state. After throwing the electric ball, the young girl had already turned her head, a sweet smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. Her pair of charming eyes were also filled with warmth. She wrapped one arm around the man's waist. After throwing the electric ball, she retracted her other hand and placed it on the man's chest. She lifted her eyes and met his gaze. In her star-like eyes, it was as if a pool of spring water had been disturbed, overflowing with youth, enchanting and seductive. My man, you should rest after being injured. The girl's clear and sweet voice was as gentle as water. Suddenly she wrapped her arms around his neck. She carefully avoided his injured shoulder. Their breaths were very close. The young lady's clear and hoarse voice was filled with a faint smile. You've protected me for so long. As my man, you should also enjoy the feeling of being protected by me. Zhou Xian's pupils reflected the young lady's devastatingly beautiful looks. Seeing that he didn't speak, Yiqing Luo's gentle smile became even more obvious. She tipped her toes and her moist pink lips imprinted on the man's lips. A very light touch. She pulled the distance between their lips. Then she said, "Be good, listen to me." Chapter 3781. Venerable felt that it was inconceivable. This was the first time he met someone who dared to use such a tone to speak to Zhou Xian. But that man looked as though he was enjoying it. Even the lines on his cold, hard and elegant face softened. There was even a hint of a smile on his rosy lips. His entire person seemed to be as gentle as jade. Venerable's mind flashed past 3 words. Little pretty face. That's right. Zhou Xian's current look was really like a little man who relied on his own wife's protection. After being pacified by his own wife, then he became obedient and docile. Zhou Xian knew what Venerable was thinking right now. He would definitely express delightfully, and enjoying the taste of his own wife's protection not bad. Whereas after the pacification, Yiqing Luo, who saw the man's smile, let go of Zhou Xian's waist. He took a few steps back, slightly tilting her head. Her blood-red eyes flashed with a flirtatious red glow. Her pink lips curled upwards as she smiled sweetly. "Wait for me." Smiling sweetly, the young lady's figure flashed past. Her fiery red dress was like a blooming rose, gorgeous beyond compare. In a blink of an eye, that fiery figure had already appeared in front of you, Venerable. She squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled into a smile, ridiculing as she looked down at you, Venerable, who was twitching from time to time. You Venerable's heart trembled as he curled his body and moved backwards. He moved. Along with the wind, a burnt smell floated over. "Who on earth are you? Why do you know the thunderclap arts?" That is. You Venerable's eyes widened as his eyes were filled with fear and shock. The electric current flowing on his body. It made his consciousness even clearer. This was the thunderclap arts. The incantation which had disappeared for thousands of years. It was rumored. The thunderclap arts which hid the god sovereign's secret. It actually appeared here. And appeared on this young lady. No wonder. No wonder. His Lord Father had spent a lot of effort to deal with Yiqing Luo several times, and it wasn't without reason. Previously he only thought that this Yiqing Luo had obtained a bit of good fortune from Zhou Xian, hence she was able to turn misfortune into blessing, avoiding his Lord Father's plot. Now it looked like this lady was definitely not an ordinary person. He found it strange. For a person like Zhou Xian, how could he possibly take a fancy to an ordinary girl who only had looks but no ability at all? Everything was because this woman was hiding a huge secret. Yu Prime suppressed the surging shock in his heart as his eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo, trying to imprint Yiqing Luo's looks into his mind. He was also desperately searching in his heart. Information regarding Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo, who was getting impatient from his stare, raised her brows. Her blood-colored eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. "Who am I? Don't you know? Didn't you come to the land for me?" She took a small step forward. You Venerable was so shocked that his face turned pale. She smiled. "As for why I know the thunderclap technique, there's no reason, because the thunderclap technique itself belongs to me." "No, impossible." Yuzun opened his mouth to deny without any hesitation as his eyes stared deadly at Yiqing Luo. "You're not Yiqing Luo. You're absolutely not Yiqing Luo. Who on earth are you?" Yiqing Luo laughed happily. A cold arc appeared between his brows. Chapter 3782. Yuzun's pupils constricted under the pressure. His distorted face was flushed with an abnormal shade of red. His emotions had become exceptionally crazy. He shook his head as he forcefully supported his battered and exhausted body as he slowly shifted out of the range of Yiqing Luo's pressure. Fresh blood streaked across his body, leaving behind a blood-colored mark. Blood kept gushing out of the wound on his severed arm. He totally didn't notice it. He only stared at Yiqing Luo in shock. He was still mumbling, "No, impossible. Thunderclap arts can't be yours. This is impossible. You're not Yiqing Luo, you're not." The young lady gave a cold laugh as her pink lips curled upwards, as though she was ridiculing Yuzun's incompetence. Her fingertips moved. Electric currents flowed and formed an electric ball in her palm. The electric ball shone with a dazzling radiance. It caused one's eyes to have a crystal-like splendor. That electric ball was extremely beautiful. But it was filled with a shocking murderous intent. Yuzun's eyes widened as his expression contorted malevolently. That electric ball, in the eyes of outsiders, was a colorful and beautiful light ball. But he was very clear. This electric ball, as compared to the electric ball which landed on him earlier, was much stronger. If this electric ball came down, he would absolutely lose his life. If he didn't remember wrongly, the thunderclap arts which the young lady displayed had at least reached the standard of thunderclap arts 5th level and above. Yuzun stared at Yiqing Luo unwillingly. In an attempt to find any flaw from Yiqing Luo, he couldn't believe it. A young lady who looked to be 15 to 16 years old. To be able to refine that once world-shocking secret art, thunderclap arts, to 5th level and above. Especially when the thunderclap arts had been lost for thousands of years. But when that electric ball which was filled with electric current landed on him, A swish sound was heard. The numbness from the electric current started to spread to every corner of his body. He only felt a dull pain in his internal organs and a heart-wrenching feeling, as though his internal organs were being torn apart by the electric current. He could even smell the burnt smell coming from his body. Wave after wave of electric current made his consciousness a little scattered. No. He was the noble Yuzun. He was his father's favorite son. He was the future master of the gloomy palace. Everything here would belong to him. How could he be defeated by a woman? He didn't want to die like this. He absolutely did not want to die. The Nether Prime's heart was roaring, screaming and venting. However, he could feel the electric shock coming from his body and the buzzing sound of the electric current beside his ears. There was despair everywhere. Idiot. Just as the Dark Lord's consciousness was about to dissipate and his vision was about to turn black. Suddenly, an extremely dignified and cold reprimanding voice sounded beside his ear. That voice was like a clear spring in the desert, like a withered tree coming to life in the spring. It caused the Dark Lord to have a moment of clarity before his death, trying his best to widen his eyes. Lord Father, he opened his mouth, but what came out was only a soundless stream of air. You disappoint me too much. That cold and treacherous voice made people shiver. Venerable Yu's consciousness was in a daze. His breathing was tight as he tried his best to open his eyes. Save me. Save me. That voice was heavy for a moment. Venerable Yu anxiously wanted to find traces of his father. But he felt weak all over and totally couldn't muster up any strength. Chapter 3783. Yuzun cried out in his heart. But he didn't get any response. His heart sank bit by bit. Despair corroded his body and mind. Just at this moment, he suddenly felt an extremely powerful and majestic energy surging into his body. That energy was like a scorching inferno burning him. But Yuzun didn't feel any pain. Instead, his eyes suddenly opened wide. His pupils were filled with ecstasy. The inferno in his body was burning as though it was going to swallow him up completely. He wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he propped up the last bit of consciousness in his body, as he speedily absorbed the surging inferno. The faster the energy was absorbed, Yuzun's consciousness became clearer. Even the pain in his body and his internal organs from being struck by the thunderclap arts seemed to have turned into ashes under this inferno. This was his father's energy. His father hadn't given up on him. Yuzun was overjoyed as he greedily absorbed the endless energy. The inferno that gathered in his body was restoring his body. After Yiqing Luo threw that electric ball, she suddenly had a moment of dizziness. Her petite body swayed slightly. Not knowing if it was an illusion or something, she actually felt a faint stabbing pain in her limbs and bones one after another. A very minute-piercing pain. So minute that she wasn't sure if that piercing pain existed or not. She had just moved. Her body was brought into someone's embrace. The familiar breath made the anxiety and uneasiness in Yiqing Luo's heart stop. Even the piercing pain, which she wasn't able to tell if it was an illusion or real, also disappeared. She closed her eyes as her head rested on Damo Xian's shoulder. Her breathing was slightly light. Yiqing Luo didn't notice the changes in her body. But the man who was standing by the side, enjoying the feeling of his wife's protection, was staring at Yiqing Luo without blinking, taking in all the minute changes in her emotions. Naturally, he also saw Yiqing Luo's frowning slender brows from time to time. Damo Xian hugged the person in his arms. He felt that the person in his arms was as light as a feather, as though it was an illusion. His brows creased slightly. This feeling made him extremely displeased. But when he lowered his eyes to look at the alluring face of the person in his arms, his usually calm and indifferent face suddenly tensed up. Even his usually emotionless peach blossom eyes were surging with raging waves. Instinctively, he tightened his arms around himself. Little Luo, he opened his mouth and called out her name. His voice was a little bitter. Yiqing Luo didn't open her eyes and only responded with a faint "n" as her brows were filled with fatigue. Damo Xian's thin lips moved. But in the end he didn't say anything. He only pulled her closer to his embrace. The young girl's aura was so majestic that it made him feel even more pressured, and it lingered around her body in a chaotic manner. It seemed like it was about to dissipate. However, he was hesitant. But what worried Damo Xian was The girl's originally bright and beautiful face was now as pale as a sheet of paper. It was especially so for those originally pink and tender lips, which were now devoid of any color. Not only that, the girl's aura was very chaotic. It was as if the dark force in his body had been disrupted, and he had lost his overall goal. He was like a headless fly scurrying around randomly. This situation, generally speaking, that was the tendency of going into chi deviation. It was because the energy which little Luo had expended earlier. Chapter 3784. Cough. A light cough sounded in Diamo Xian's mind. Diamo Xian's eyes turned cold as he quickly found the source of that voice. So shocked that the voice coughed a few more times. Diamo Xian, it's me. It's me. The voice was familiar, causing the chill in Diamo Xian's eyes to recede slightly. Old Man Tsong. This voice sounded like that spiritual elder beside Lil Luo. Old Man Tsong, in order to prevent himself from being accidentally injured again, replied repeatedly, yes, it's me. Diamo Xian kid, don't make a move just because you don't agree. This old man's old bones can't withstand your torment. What's the matter? Diamo Xian's brows furrowed slightly. The spiritual elder in Lil Luo's azure dew bracelet deliberately avoided Lil Luo, and secretly communicated with his spirit magnetic field. This made Diamo Xian's heart have a feeling of unease. Cough. You've also seen Luo Lass's current situation. Old Man Tsong spoke carefully. Diamo Xian replied. Old Man Tsong said, Luo Lass suddenly exploded with such power. Do you know the reason? Diamo Xian's shimmering eyes flashed slightly. He lowered his eyes and answered, I know. How could he not know? Yuzun used her as a bargaining chip. Not only did he injure him, he also humiliated him. His Lil Luo, must have pushed all the responsibility to herself, thinking that all this was because of her. Because she was worried about him. Because she wanted to protect him. So, the suppressed power in her body, and those divine weapons that were connected to her profound jade heart, all had a reaction. This was just like before when she forcefully used the power of the divine weapons, overloading her body. Just that this time, it was the kind of strong intention that she wanted to protect him. It drove some kind of power in her body. It caused the power in her body to rebel to the point where it could not be stopped. Actually, your guess is not entirely correct. Old Man Tsong sighed, his tone somewhat helpless. I think you should have seen through Luo Lass. Her identity. Diamo Xian remained silent for a long while before spitting out a word, and Old Man Tsong said, ever since she was young she was treated as trash by others. It wasn't because she was a so-called trash, nor was it because her meridians were truly the meridians of trash. To be more accurate, she wasn't trash. It was just that there was a seal placed within her body. A seal that completely sealed away her power. Diamo Xian wasn't surprised as he replied indifferently, so? Right now, what she is consuming is not the protective consciousness of the divine phoenix profound heart jade, nor is it the power of the divine artifact. Old Man Tsong's voice became increasingly deep. She's gradually awakening. Awaken? Diamo Xian's expression finally had a slight change. What do you mean? Her willpower and mental strength has exceeded this old man's expectations. Her willpower caused the seal in her body to create a gap. Old Man Tsong's voice deepened as he continued. This body of hers has not undergone a true cleansing of the marrow and bones. Generally speaking, it can only be considered as a mortal body. Once the seal is removed, her power will awaken. And this awakening does not come from her hard work step by step and self-improvement. This consequence you should be very clear. Diamo Xian's pupils suddenly contracted. The arms that encircled the young girl's delicate body also unconsciously tightened. Yiqing Luo's brows twisted in pain. Chapter 3785. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo's voice was soft, filled with exhaustion. Diamo Xian immediately relaxed the strength of his arm, his thin lips curled up slightly as he shook his head. Nothing. Yiqing Luo's head was just about to bury into his chest when she suddenly recalled that he had been injured by Yuzun previously as she instantly stopped her actions. She raised her head, her tired eyelids trembling, but she stubbornly did not lean on the man's chest. That heart-wrenching look made Diamo Xian's lips curl up silently. His large palm covered her head and pressed her into his embrace. It's just a small injury, it's not enough for me to not be able to carry my Xiao Luo. Your injury. Yiqing Luo wanted to move away. However, the man's low and hoarse voice floated down from above her head. If you move around and touch my wound, it will be terrible if it splits open. At that moment the girl obediently nestled in his arms, not moving at all. Zhou Xian stroked the young lady's back in satisfaction as he circled her in his arms. This episode made Zhou Xian attempt to communicate with Old Man Tsang in his mind. Old Man Tsang's mental strength had already withdrawn from his magnetic field. His eyes slightly darkened, and the words that Old Man Tsang had just said surfaced in his mind. You should be very clear about the consequences of awakening her power. He lowered his eyes and looked at the girl in his arms. Power? Awakening? That power was so strong that it made him feel even more pressured. Was this the power that she had awakened after removing the seal? Perhaps, very soon, his little Luo heir would really be able to walk side by side with him. Just when the atmosphere was right. Suddenly, the girl in his arms opened her eyes. His blood-red eyes shone with a bewitching and evil light. There was no sign of fatigue on his face. The sudden change in imposing manner made the tenderness between Zhou Xian's brows vanish instantly. Before he could ask, the girl in his arms had already raised her hand and pressed on his uninjured shoulder. Then the petite figure nimbly and gracefully leapt out of his embrace. Her lips curled up, and the light in her eyes became even more charming. In the blink of an eye, a blazing feather fan appeared at her fingertips. She waved it casually. The ghastly flame fan swept up thousands of wind waves and rapidly surged forward. The dazzling red light was like a sea of fire. Wisps of profound energy were like a flame tongue baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, devouring everything in front of it. Dying struggle. The girl's clear voice was filled with killing intent. His 5 fingers quickly spun the glowing flame fan. The silver threads were like a spider's web, scattering in all directions like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers. They were densely packed like a giant net that covered the sky and covered the earth. A muffled groan sounded in the surging waves of fire. The silver threads had already wrapped around the person who had stood up at some point in time. Yiqing Luo moved her fingers. The silver threads quickly retracted and wrapped around the man. The red light gradually dissipated. The silhouette of that person was revealed in the silver threads. His entire body was charred black. The clothes on his body were charred and he was in a sorry state. His hair, as messy as a madman's, also exuded a strong burnt smell. Wasn't that the Dark Lord who had been struck twice by the thunderclap art? Zhou Xian followed closely to Yiqing Luo's side as he narrowed his peach blossom eyes and looked at Yuzun. His aura. Amen. Yiqing Luo nodded. The aura on Yuzun was totally different from before. Previously when she just met him, it wasn't as gloomy and strange as now. The current Yuzun was enveloped in a layer of black qi which could be seen with the naked eye. Chapter 3786. Especially the look in his eyes. Sinister and vengeful, filled with black qi. This Yuzun was obviously much harder to deal with than before. Zhou Xian only took a look at Yuzun before his gaze returned back to Yiqing Luo. He met Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes as a sliver of worry flashed past his eyes. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as her long and narrow eyes curved slightly. The corners of her eyes rose upwards, looking devilishly alluring. She raised up a finger as she placed it on Zhou Xian's thin lips. I know what you want to say, but please believe me and hand him over to me. Her tone was firm and her voice was gentle, as though she was discussing what to eat today calmly, without any fluctuations or ups and downs. Lil Luo, Zhou Xian frowned as his eyes were filled with disapproval. Yiqing Luo shook her head at him. Immediately after, she glanced sideways as she looked at Yuzun. A glint of bloodthirsty malevolence flashed past her eyes. He made use of me to hurt you and humiliate you. Her pink lips parted slightly as she spat out every single word. Her voice was like frozen snow. I want to personally send him to hell. Zhou Xian's eyes were gradually tainted with a sliver of warmth. If she said she wasn't touched, that was absolutely fake. Her heart, a certain soft spot, seemed to have been hit hard. His eyes deepened as his peach blossom eyes gazed deeply at the young lady's chilly side view. Looking at the young lady's countenance, it was filled with malevolence for him. His Adam's apple moved as his voice was slightly deep. "All right, I'll watch you send him to hell." Perhaps she sensed the man's scorching gaze. Yiqing Luo turned back. The expression on her face had already turned gentle. She had just glanced sideways. The man had already encircled her slender waist as he pulled her into his embrace. A warm kiss landed on the young lady's lips. Yiqing Luo was stunned as her body immediately softened. She heard the man's low and hoarse voice filled with worry. "Don't force yourself. If you're tired, then stop." Yiqing Luo smiled as she nodded. After the two of them separated, Yiqing Luo's figure moved as she approached Yuzun. At the same time in Dmo Xian's mind, an indistinct electric wave floated and old man Song's anxious and worried voice sounded. "Overlord, why didn't you stop her? Her body can't take it." Dmo Xian's gaze was fixated on Yiqing Luo's figure without blinking. His gaze was very gentle. "Do you think I can stop her?" He chuckled. It was hard to tell whether he was happy, worried, or both. Old man Song fell silent. "That's right, if Luo Yu decided on something, who could stop her? Especially when it concerned Dmo Xian." "Old man Song." Dmo Xian suddenly called out. Even if old man Song could not see Dmo Xian, she could also feel that Dmo Xian's gaze towards Yiqing Luo had turned even gentler. "What she wants to do, I will not interfere." Dmo Xian's voice was very low, and "I believe in her." He paused slightly and his voice also became a lot gentler. Taking a step back, "There's still me behind her." When old man Song heard this, his entire spirit body froze. He knew Dmo Xian's feelings for Yiqing Luo. He also knew how sincere the feelings between the both of them were. But he had not expected Dmo Xian would have such an understanding towards Yiqing Luo. Moreover, he was wholeheartedly for Yiqing Luo and his plans were very clear. To satisfy Yiqing Luo's thoughts. And also to be her backing, protecting Yiqing Luo's safety. That's right. This man cared about Yiqing Luo more than anyone else. Chapter 3787. He would follow Yiqing Luo's thoughts. To let Yiqing Luo fight in her current state. He would definitely be behind her, building the most solid fortress for her to protect her. The most important point is. Dmo Xian suddenly opened his mouth. His voice was low and hoarse, mellow like wine. "She needs this kind of growth method." Old man Song was suddenly enlightened. So the overlord had agreed so readily, he had already calculated everything in his heart. In the vast starry sky, profound rays shot out in all directions. Yuzun, who was covered by the huge silver silk net, stared fiercely at the red-robed young lady in front of him who was pressing down. The young lady was extremely languid as she landed lightly a few steps away from him. She raised her hand gently. Her every action was elegant and languid. Her slender fingers pinched that glower flame fan. She shook her hand. The silver silk which was entangled on Yuzun's body tightened. Yuzun howled in pain. His voice was thick like a wild beast howling. All the muscles on his body tightened as he struggled. The black qi which was emitted from his body became thicker and thicker. The evil qi gradually rose, making Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes. She slowly took a step back. Which was the time to take a step back. Roar! The nether prime suddenly roared out. Blood shot out from his body. The densely packed silver silk actually bounced back from his body. But following the instant the silver silk bounced back, his body also started to bleed profusely. The strong force and the aftershock from the rebound made Yiqing Luo stagger 2 steps back from the impact. The viscous liquid also splattered towards Yiqing Luo's face. At such a close distance, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that the blood which Yuzun splattered contained traces of evil qi. Even the blood that splashed out from his body was dyed black. She frowned. She raised her hand and used the glower flame fan to draw an arc. It blocked the black blood water. The blood splattered and landed on the ground of the vast starry sky. It seemed as though it had a corrosive ability. The ground was corroded, forming many small pits. This made Yiqing Luo slightly surprised. Not only did the Nether Prime's entire person change, but his aura and power also underwent a huge change. Even his blood seemed to have changed. This was Zhou Xian's consciousness space. His blood could even corrode the ground of this space. This Nether Prime, could it be that he used some so-called dark forbidden technique to transform himself? Judging from Onyo Palace's character, Yiqing Luo expressed that it was highly possible. You want to trap me? Dream on. After Yuzun broke free from the restraints, he concealed himself ruthlessly. The killing intent in his heart was overflowing. His 5 fingers turned into a claw and like a flash in the void, he attacked towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo, you can't win me, you can't win me. The Nether Prime's emotions were clearly not right. His eyes were filled with crazed killing intent. There was only one thought in his mind, that was to kill Yiqing Luo. In front of Zhou Xian he brutally tortured Yiqing Luo to death. That intense killing intent was sinister and strange. The attack from the 5 fingers caused profound energy to surge violently like stormy waves. Facing this menacing attack, Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as her blood-colored eyes seemed to outline a bewitching flame flower, which was exceptionally evil. Oh, really? You can try. The young lady's voice was lazy and filled with ridicule. As though she totally didn't put you prime in her eyes. That arrogant attitude caused the Netherlord's eyes to turn even redder. Chapter 3788. Boundless and terrifying profound energy poured down along with the Netherlord's claw. Carried with it an endless amount of evil energy. A hurricane rose, the air and the space shook along with it. The ferocious attack was already approaching him head-on. The girl didn't even have a chance to dodge. The Netherlord's eyes surged with madness. The corners of his mouth curled into a crazy smile. This slut will definitely die. The power of this claw could definitely tear her everything. Bang! The Netherlord's claw landed. Air waves surged. In the air a deep black mark was swept open. The air waves surged, the powerful and majestic aura rippled in the air, drawing circles of ripples. Ha! You're dead. The Netherlord laughed loudly as he pulled his hand out of the deep pit on the ground. Blood dripped down and covered his arm. He didn't notice it at all. The bloody hand was extremely similar to the hand that had been broken. He laughed crazily. The black energy in his eyes surged like a whirlpool. Suddenly, a cold and enchanting laughter, melodious and sweet, like pearls falling on a plate, entered his ears. Who are you saying died? That clear voice shouted with thick mockery. Oh? Is it you? After the Netherlord heard this voice, his smile instantly froze on his face. He opened his eyes wide, overflowing with hostility. Following the voice, he looked over. Then he saw that the girl who should have died under his claw was actually smiling faintly at the side not far from him. She was alive. There were no signs of injuries on her body. He was stunned, turning his head back in disbelief to look at the huge pit where the claw landed. The profound wave dispersed. It was empty in front of him. You deserved to die. The Netherlord was unable to restrain his anger, his entire face distorted to the extreme. He raised that bloody hand again. Boom boom boom. The air vibrated, the space shook violently. The dark light rolled and the evil Yin Qi danced wildly like a flood. Where are you hitting? The girl's voice sounded from the other side. The Netherlord became even crazier, his entire face flushed red, his eyes bloodshot from anger, incomparably scarlet. He crazily released his berserk profound energy in all directions. However, every time it looked like it was about to hit its target. Or when he attacked at close range and was about to grab the girl's vitals. The young lady in front of him would instantly melt into the air and disappear without a trace. Once, twice, thrice. This was definitely not a coincidence. When the last attack once again failed to hit its target, Yishuan's eyes widened. Yuzun was already panting heavily, stumbling as he stood there. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Yiqing Luo with hatred and unwillingness. In an attempt to find a trace of injury on Yiqing Luo's body. But, no matter how unwilling he was, the young girl stood there in a carefree manner, like a fairy from the 9 heavens, unreachable and worthy of respect. In fact, under wave after wave of ferocious attacks, the heavenly demon sect's Grand Monarch Palaces, Grand Monarch Palaces, Grand Monarch Palaces, Grand Monarch. He was panting heavily, having almost used up all of his strength. However, the young girl's expression did not change. He didn't seem to be affected at all. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Nether Prime roared agitatedly, his expression extremely hideous. They had all received help from their father. How could he possibly not be Yiqing Luo's match? How could she possibly avoid his attacks? No. Wrong. In Nether Prime's mind, The scene of the young girl disappearing into thin air suddenly surfaced one after another of his attacks. Chapter 3789. Blink Movement Secret Arts? Thunderclap Arts. These two were secret arts from thousands of years ago which caused people to tremble in fear. This lady not only knew how to execute the 5th level and above of Thunderclap Arts. She even knew the Blink Movement Secret Arts. Surely she wasn't. Yuzun's complexion turned pale as he stared at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. Surely you aren't proficient in the 5 Ghost Secret Arts. 5 Ghost Secret Arts? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her face was filled with ridicule. What's that? Yuzun's face kept twitching as he couldn't tell if Yiqing Luo was intentionally hiding it or she really didn't know. His heart felt as if it was being strangled by something. There was a suffocating feeling. If Yiqing Luo really knew the 5 Ghost Secret Arts, he absolutely had no chance of winning. Yiqing Luo naturally saw the fear and unwillingness in Yuzun's eyes. She could also tell that Yuzun had a strong urge to kill her, but under the awe of the Blink Movement Secret Arts and Thunderclap Arts, he didn't dare to act rashly. She was very curious about the 5 Ghost Secret Art that the Nether Prime mentioned. What on earth was that? What did it have to do with the Blink Movement Secret Arts and Thunderclap Arts? It could actually make Yuzun's fear win over his insanity and not be like before, blindly attacking her and wanting to kill her. She still remembered. Previously, when she was cultivating in the Purgatory Tower, after she obtained the Blink Movement Secret Arts and Thunderclap Arts, Old Man Song had been instructing her not to use these secret arts in front of outsiders. Later on, the Dark Forces or Ghost Doctor Thief God etc., when they saw her using the Blink Movement Secret Arts, they all displayed interest and shock. Could it be? This was the reward which she obtained from the Purgatory Tower. Great, it was one of the 5 Ghost Secret Arts? But what did this so-called 5 Ghost Secret Arts mean? Why did it make Yuzun so fearful? After the Earth Realm's matter was over, she would definitely ask Old Man Song, what on earth was this so-called 5 Ghost Secret Arts? Yuzun suddenly cried out in pain. The evil Yin Qi which enveloped him became more and more rampant. Not knowing if it was Yiqing Luo's misperception or Yuzun's scream was too terrifying. Yiqing Luo somehow felt that the evil Yin Qi seemed to be gnawing on Yuzun's body. It was as if it wanted to completely devour the Nether Prime and fuse it into evil Yin energy. The Nether Prime fell to the ground, his entire body showing an extremely difficult to bend, twitching non-stop. The dense black aura rapidly swept over him, causing his twisted face to contort into a mess. The rampaging black qi made Yiqing Luo take a few steps back. She frowned slightly. This guy, is he really going to be devoured by the evil Yin Qi? She remembered that Yuji addressed this person as Lord Young Master. Moreover, that respectful manner of hers. Obviously, his status in the Nether Palace was second only to the Palace Master. The evil Yin Qi could actually devour him? Just as Yiqing Luo was making all sorts of guesses in her mind. Shrouded in black gas, the Nether Venerable, who was screaming incessantly, suddenly burst forth with a domineering and majestic aura. Then a black figure shrouded in black gas leaped into the air. Like a cannonball, he spun a few rounds in the air. Then it landed heavily on the ground. Ah! That black figure roared a few times as he opened up his arms and a raging profound energy exploded. With the momentum of swallowing the mountains and rivers, it shot out in all directions. The black gas surged wildly, giving off an extremely oppressive feeling. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Under this powerful qi strength, the Heavenly Dragon King's body shook. Chapter 3790. Yiqing Luo frowned, her fingertips immediately spread open the glower flame fan. The red glow that rose up blocked all the dense black energy that was surging over. Strong qi danced wildly, the air waves were monstrous, the hurricane whistled. Even under the protection of the glower flame fan, that strong hurricane still blew Yiqing Luo's hair and red robe fluttering loudly. The strong sense of oppression seemed to be crushing the condensed aura in front of her. Yiqing Luo's arms faintly felt a little numb. And on the other side, after Yiqing Luo was sucked into the vortex, the auction was in ruins. Zhou Mo Gui Wu and the rest, led hundreds of strange beasts, almost swallowed the so-called corpse puppet Gu. Everyone was already exhausted, but did not dare to easily relax their vigilance. Even the entire auction couldn't see the existence of the corpse puppet Gu. But no one knew from which corner a worm would suddenly jump out. After all, the corpse puppet goo was too small. Even the strange beasts might not be able to take care of every corpse puppet goo. Everyone gathered together, staring intently at the surroundings. At this time they could only choose to believe each other, only choose to unite. Xiao Yinyan panted lightly, leaning on the side to rest, his eyes looking around. Pei Xing quietly handed him a bottle from behind, asked, "Worried about Luo?" Xiao Yinyan took the bottle, glanced at Pei Xing and pursed his lips. "Yes. This is the medicinal pill Luo gave me before to replenish my energy. Eat it carefully, don't let others see." Pei Xing glanced around with the corner of his dark golden eyes, sneered and said, "Don't think that those people are on our side now. They might be harboring evil thoughts in their hearts. If they find out that we have pills in our hands, they will definitely fight amongst themselves." What Pei Xing said was indeed right. After a few rounds of fighting in this auction, all the cultivators were already physically and mentally exhausted. If they knew that they had medicinal pills in their hands, those people would definitely go crazy to snatch it. Xiao Yinyan used Pei Xing as a cover and swallowed a medicinal pill. Then he raised his eyebrows and glanced at Pei Xing. After Brother Pei's profound grade broke out, even your brain became smart. When am I not smart? Pei Xing bumped Xiao Yinyan's shoulder. After Xiao Yinyan swallowed the pill, his complexion looked slightly better. He looked around again and sighed, "Luo, when will she come back?" With the Scarlet Clarity Pavilion's master by Luo's side and Azure Dragon, Luo will definitely be fine. Pei Xing comforted. Moreover, Luo is not the kind of woman who can be defeated easily. We should believe in her. Xiao Yinyan looked at the ruins in front of him. The strength of the other party has already surpassed our expectations. Furthermore, I don't trust that Scarlet Clarity Pavilion's master. Pei Xing's eyes widened. Say, Brother Qiao, don't tell me you're really interested in Luo? Why does your tone sound like you're jealous of the Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion lord? As soon as Pei Xing finished speaking, Xiao Yinyan suddenly looked up. His silver hair floated along with his energy, covering half of his face. However, Pei Xing could still see the displeasure and coldness in his eyes. Pei Xing keenly sensed something and shrank back a little. While he was racking his brains trying to break the stalemate, Xiao Yinyan suddenly looked into the distance again. It was as if his actions and the look in his eyes had never happened at all. Chapter 3791. He even raised his hand and poked Xiao Yinyan with his finger. Xiao Yinyan didn't even bat an eyelid. Pei Xing moved closer to him. "Are you for real?" He paused and carefully looked at Xiao Yinyan's face. Then he coughed lightly. "Brother Pei, don't forget that Luo has a fiancé, and that fiancé is the Overlord." At this point he paused for a moment. He carefully looked at Xiao Yinyan's face again. Seeing that Xiao Yinyan's expression didn't change much, he poked Xiao Yinyan again. "Let's not talk about the identity of Luo's fiancé. Just look at the way Luo looks at the Overlord, and the atmosphere between them." Pei Xing seemed to recall the scene not long ago. He retracted his hand and rubbed his arm. It's obvious that no one can interfere with their relationship. "Brother Pei, don't even think about." Before he could finish his sentence, Xiao Yinyan, who had been looking into the distance with his silver hair covering half of his face, suddenly turned his head. His deep eyes were devoid of any emotion. He calmly and deeply looked at Pei Xing. Pei Xing was startled by the look in his eyes, and the last word was stuck in his throat. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But when he saw Xiao Yinyan's hungry eyes, he swallowed his words. His brother Pei. It seemed that his attitude towards Luo had been different from the beginning. Even his own sister Qiao Yulu was cold and indifferent. But when it came to Luo, he was always protecting her, as if he couldn't bear to see Luo get hurt or wronged. Could it be? His brother Pei was deeply in love with Luo. Immediately, Pei Xing's mind was filled with a melodramatic drama. He looked at Xiao Yinyan with pity, sympathy and helplessness. "Why are you staring at me?" Xiao Yinyan frowned. This seemingly silly brother of his was giving him a headache. Before they got to know each other, his impression of Pei Xing was the boss of the Gathering Treasures Exchange, a weak and useless person who couldn't even protect the family business left by his ancestors and only knew how to dream. After they became familiar with each other, after learning about the cause and effect of the treasure gathering, he also learned about Pei Xing's character. Xiao Yinyan expressed his opinion that Pei Xing was really stupid. He was so stupid that he didn't know how to act according to the mood of others. Couldn't they tell that he was in a bad mood? Couldn't he see that he didn't want to answer his question? However, Pei Xing had to ask again and again. What kind of gaze was she using to look at him in the end? Pei Xing, who was unaware of Xiao Yinyan's thoughts, said sincerely, I really feel sorry for you, Brother Pei. Your love rivals are all so powerful. If it's not the pavilion master of the Scarlet Clarity Pavilion, then it's the legendary Lord Dizun. How are you going to compete? Before Pei Xing could finish his words, suddenly a force of gravity came from his shoulder. His whole body fell backward. His back touched the ground. The gravel burned his body and it stung a little. Pei Xing frowned and struggled. However, the elbow on his chest was so strong that he couldn't get up at all. Chapter 3792. Pei Xing fell to the ground. His chest was pressed against Xiao Yinyan's elbow. Almost half of Xiao Yinyan's body was leaning over Pei Xing. His silver hair fell on Pei Xing's cheek. Made him feel itchy. Pei Xing was not used to such close proximity. Especially, before he could finish his sentence, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Xiao Yinyan suddenly lowered his head. That cold face was reflected in Pei Xing's eyes at such a close distance. His silver hair almost fell on Pei Xing's face. The distance between them was so close that Pei Xing could almost feel Xiao Yinyan's breath on his face. Only now did Pei Xing realize in shock that the distance between the two of them had already exceeded his imagination. Wait, isn't there something wrong with this posture? He was a man. How could a man like him be pressed to the ground by his brother Pei? Pei Xing hurriedly raised his hand to stop Xiao Yinyan's chest. Brother Pei. But how could he defeat Xiao Yinyan with his strength? Xiao Yinyan didn't move Xiao Yinyan at all. Xiao Yinyan maintained his posture as steady as a mountain. At such a close distance, his deep eyes gazed at him deeply. Pei Xing felt goosebumps. You're willing to shut up? Xiao Yinyan said indifferently. His voice was cold and indifferent. Pei Xing's lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But looking at Xiao Yinyan's eyes in the close distance, he could only maintain his stiff body and shut his mouth. Xiao Yinyan raised his lips in satisfaction. Then can you let go of me now? Pei Xing felt that the position of two grown men, one lying down and the other pressing down, was really too much for his eyes. He couldn't accept it. What he got in response was an almost inaudible sneer. Pei Xing didn't have time to react. Suddenly Xiao Yinyan lowered his head. His chin was on Pei Xing's shoulder. Xiao Yinyan's lips were very close to Pei Xing's skin. So close that Pei Xing's face was distorted in shock. Pei Xing couldn't bear it and wanted to struggle. The man's sneer drifted into her ears. My feelings for Ah Luo are not what you think. If you continue to talk nonsense, I will use my actions to prove it. When he said the last sentence, he deliberately moved closer to Pei Xing. That gentle breathing almost made Pei Xing collapse. The iron-willed straight man was about to go crazy. Of course he understood Xiao Yinyan's words. What kind of proof was that? Was he trying to prove that he, Xiao Yinyan, actually had a homosexual fetish? But fortunately, after Xiao Yinyan said this, he quickly distanced himself from Pei Xing. Pei Xing, who had regained his freedom, fled several steps away from Xiao Yinyan. It was as if a man from a good family had been molested. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared at Xiao Yinyan in shock. The latter's face was calm and he looked at him calmly. His thin lips moved slightly. Now, do you still say that I'm interested in Ah Luo? No. Oh no. Definitely not. Pei Xing was scared out of his wits and waved his hands quickly. The corner of Xiao Yinyan's mouth twitched with a faint smile, and his expression was somewhat mischievous. Many people at the side saw this scene. Everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment and shock as they looked at the two of them. I couldn't tell that the two of you actually have that kind of relationship. A careless voice came from behind the two of them. Chapter 3793. The young man was dressed in a black brocade robe. Her jet black hair was casually tied into a bun. His hair was very messy, but it didn't give one a rude feeling at all. On the contrary, it made the young man look even more languid. The most eye-catching thing was the young man's pair of fox-like charming phoenix eyes. The corners of his eyes rose slightly. It even drew out a coquettish lotus pattern, which made the young man look even more charming like a fox. Xiao Yinyan took a look at that person. He remembered that Yi Qing Luo called the young man's name earlier. Young Master Mo. Zhou Mo narrowed his bewitching phoenix eyes and smiled wickedly. Young Master Qiao's secret has been discovered by this young master. Shouldn't young Master Qiao show some sincerity and seal this young master's mouth? Qiao Yinyan's expression didn't change as he chuckled lightly. Secret? What secret do I have? Zhou Mo sneakily glanced at Pei Xing before returning to him with a sneaky smile. Young Master Qiao forcefully suppressing a man from a good family. If this matter were to spread to someone's ears, what do you think she would think? Qiao Yinyan's expression finally had a slight change. His eyes moved slightly as the smile froze on his face. He opened his mouth and spat out a word. But he didn't know what to say. Looking at Qiao Yinyan's awkward expression, Zhou Mo laughed heartily. He laughed so much that he was like a flower branch that attracted the attention of others. Her peerless appearance was as charming as a fox, exuding a kind of soul-stirring charm. This smile caused many profounders to look over at him. Suddenly, a little black figure scurried over from the side. A little head squeezed in between the two of them. Kitty Li widened her lively eyes as she stared at Qiao Yinyan and Zhou Mo. What are you guys talking about? What the hell is forcefully suppressing a man from a good family? What person? Who is that person? Do you know each other? Why doesn't Kitty know that you know each other? What's your relationship? A series of questions were like cannonballs, spitting out from Kitty Li's mouth. The little wildcat's voice was soft and squeaky. Zhou Mo reached out and pulled Kitty Li into his arms. He looked at Kitty Li with a smile. Little wildcat, are you jealous? You've asked so many questions. Let me think, which one should I start with? You. Kitty Li's face reddened and she lifted her foot to step on his foot. Kitty Li is not jealous. Kitty is curious. Zhou Mo's devilishly charming red phoenix eyes hooked. He lowered his head slightly and moved closer to Kitty Li's ear, smiling wickedly. Curiosity killed the cat. Whoever dares to kill Kitty, Kitty will scratch him to death. Kitty Li snorted. Zhou Mo's eyes flashed with another kind of unknown light, and he smiled even more wickedly. It's not that I can't satisfy your curiosity, but, since little wildcat wants to know something from me, shouldn't you give me something else in exchange? Kitty Li immediately widened her eyes, and her little claws fiercely scratched Zhou Mo's face. Zhou Mo chuckled as he dodged Kitty Li's claws and grabbed her hand. Immediately he hugged the little wildcat's waist and carried her in his arms. He ignored the intense struggle of the person in his arms, and looked sideways at Qiao Yinyan, who had been staring at him and Kitty Li, but his eyes were empty, not knowing what he was thinking about. He curled his lips. I've helped that old man Gui Yu to pass a message to you. Thank you for taking care of little Qing Luo in the earth boundary. He will also help you take good care of your her. The last 5 words entered Qiao Yinyan's ears. Chapter 3794. Pei Xing noticed the change in Qiao Yinyan's mood. But he couldn't ask. Until Zhou Mo walked away with Kitty Li in his arms. Pei Xing moved closer to Qiao Yinyan cautiously. But this time it wasn't as casual as before. Instead he took a small step and stared at Qiao Yinyan warily. He was afraid that Qiao Yinyan would press him to the ground again. He couldn't stand such humiliation. He moved closer. Qiao Yinyan didn't react at all. He kept his head down and clenched his fists. No one knew what he was thinking. Just now, were you trying to scare me? You lied to me? Actually, you have a girl you like? Pei Xing asked with wide eyes. Qiao Yinyan finally reacted. He glanced at him and lifted his eyelids. Stupid. He just spat out one word. Qiao Yinyan ignored Pei Xing. Pei Xing was stunned. How am I stupid? You suddenly pressed me to the ground and got so close. How could I not misunderstand? Qiao Yinyan let out a soft snort. Pei Xing heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing his attitude. He was relieved to know that Qiao Yinyan wasn't a man with a sexual fetish. At least he was safe. Pei Xing sat down next to Qiao Yinyan and began to gossip. Just now. Do you know that person? He helped someone to pass a message to you. Who is that ghost? And who is the girl you like? Qiao Yinyan ignored him. Pei Xing continued to ask, don't be shy. We're brothers. I can help you get the girl you like. Hey, you're doing it again. Before he could finish his words, his entire body was pressed to the ground again. Pei Xing struggled exaggeratedly and kept shouting. Qiao Yinyan moved closer to his ear and said in a low voice, Before that, get your girl. Pei Xing stopped struggling and his dark golden eyes flickered for a moment. Xiao Yinyan looked at his expression and sneered. Then he let go of him and stood up. Don't bother me. If you do, I won't just press you to the ground. Maybe it was because of what Xiao Yinyan said. Pei Xing's mood sank for a moment. He did not refute Xiao Yinyan's words. But at this moment, suddenly the entire auction hall flashed with light. The almost pitch-black sky seemed to have split open a thin crack. The cultivators from the various powers couldn't help but raise their heads to look. The thin crack in the pitch-black sky seemed to have been forcefully torn open by a majestic force. Soon after, the tear turned into a vast starry sky. What is that? What's going on? Why did this thing appear out of nowhere? It's like, the sky is moving. All the profound practitioners stared fixedly at the sky, their faces filled with shock. Could it be that the formation has been opened? Can we go out now? Is that the exit of the formation? We'll know once we get there. There seemed to be a glimmer of hope in everyone's hearts. One by one, they swarmed over and were about to fly up and break through the opening. That's not the exit. Just when everyone was overjoyed, suddenly, a cold and indifferent voice sounded out. Gui Wu looked in the direction of the sky with indifference. Look carefully. The profound practitioners who had their hopes shattered by Gui Wu's words were originally a little unhappy. But after hearing Gui Wu's words. Chapter 3795. Wait a minute, look. What is that? Someone in the crowd cried out in shock. Everyone turned their attention to it. The vast starry sky began to move bit by bit. Following that, they saw a vast and terrifying profound energy surging with monstrous waves. Everyone immediately cried out in alarm as they subconsciously formed a barrier in an attempt to stop the violent profound energy that was coming straight at them. But the profound energy shot out in all directions and the hurricane rolled. The entire vast starry sky was shaken by the attack. Such a terrifying aura. But no one sensed the slightest profound energy. And the profound energy that splashed around didn't cause any harm to them. They couldn't even feel a trace of the hurricane. It was as if it was fake. Wait a minute. Fake. Everyone seemed to have understood something. Their eyes stared at the sky, at the vast starry sky that had split open. Sure enough. The next moment the vast starry sky began to move bit by bit. Like a slow-motion camera moving bit by bit. Finally, the crowd saw a petite figure standing in the middle of the hurricane. Her red dress was fluttering under the hurricane, her sleeves and skirt were fluttering wildly. That was Yiqing Luo? Imperial Madam. What's going on? Why is Imperial Madam there? Is she in danger? How can it not be dangerous? Imperial Madam's condition, she can't hold on any longer. What is that place? Why is Imperial Madam in danger? Xiao Yinyan, who had been silent, suddenly stood up when he heard the three words Yiqing Luo. His line of sight followed everyone's line of sight. In the pitch-black sky that had been torn apart, under the vast starry sky, in the raging hurricane, the young lady's arm holding the glower flame fan raised slightly, forming a strong wind to block in front of her. And the surrounding hurricane kept crashing against the young lady, as if to swallow her up completely. Xiao Yinyan's pupils suddenly contracted. Pei Xing also stood up, one hand on Xiao Yinyan's shoulder, looking up at the scene in the sky. Luo is in danger. What is that place? Xiao Yinyan's eyes darkened as he looked at Gui Wu. Gui Wu also looked at the scene in the sky. A place you can't go. Xiao Yinyan frowned. What do you mean? Gui Wu did not reply. What is that place? I'm going to help him. Xiao Yinyan's brows furrowed even more tightly and his face turned ashen. Just as Xiao Yinyan was walking towards Gui Wu and was about to ask for the result. Then another exclamation came from the crowd. Quick, look. That's the person who just killed the Bloodfang monster. The scene in the vast starry sky was changing. From Yiqing Luo's body, it shifted to the side, to the disheveled man who was emitting black qi attacking crazily. That face was clearly imprinted in everyone's eyes. Wasn't it? The Dark Lord. The one who fought with the Overlord in the space of consciousness. In other words, what they were seeing now was the image of the Overlord's consciousness space. Everyone looked at each other. They were both shocked and surprised. How could the image of the Overlord's consciousness space appear here? Didn't Imperial Madam and the Red Clear Pavilion's Pavilion Master go to investigate the Array Core? Why would Imperial Madam enter the Overlord's consciousness space, and even fight with the Dark Lord? Where was the Overlord? Chapter 3796. What on earth was going on? Everyone's heart was filled with doubts. Space of consciousness? Xiao Yinyan's face suddenly turned pale as he muttered these words. Gui Wu was right. He indeed couldn't enter the space of consciousness. Other than the two who were already in the space of consciousness, there was absolutely no way for outsiders to enter the space of consciousness. Then, how did Luo enter? Could it be the Overlord? Not the Overlord. As if he could read Xiao Yinyan's thoughts, Zhou Mo's thin lips curled as he spoke lazily. The Overlord's feelings for little Qing Luo, an outsider like you will never understand. The Overlord's ability is not something that little Qing Luo can match up to. Unless the Overlord's brain is clamped by the door, then he will not let little Qing Luo fall into danger. He shrugged and continued, the Overlord is so wise and powerful, it is absolutely impossible for him to have his brain clamped by the door, so this absolutely cannot be the Overlord. Xiao Yinyan. Pei Xing. Was he praising the Overlord or belittling the Overlord? Why did it sound so strange? If it's not the Overlord, then how could Luo enter the space of consciousness? That Yuzun we haven't even fought, and I can clearly feel that he is absolutely not someone from our land domain. Pei Xing's eyes revealed a worried look as he looked at Zhou Mo anxiously. Luo and Overlord are going against each other. Isn't she in danger? Zhou Mo's charming peach blossom eyes slightly narrowed. Yes, very dangerous. Are we just going to sit here and watch? Pei Xing looked at his calm look and couldn't wait to rush over, grab his shoulder and shake violently. Zhou Mo spread out his hands. The Overlord's space of consciousness is not something that anyone can enter. At least among all of you here no one has that ability. Pei Xing's face turned slightly pale as his face collapsed. You are also Luo's friend, why can't you think of a way? Xiao Yinyan suddenly raised his head as his deep as the sea eyes looked at Zhou Mo without blinking. In the depths of his eyes, there seemed to be other lights flowing. Zhou Mo's long and narrow brows raised frivolously as his eyelids curled into an evil arc. His thin lips curled slightly as he sneered. In terms of worry, our worry is absolutely not less than yours. Besides, even if we had the ability to enter the Overlord's consciousness space, I wouldn't let you in. Xiao Yinyan's face darkened as he glared at Zhou Mo ever since Zhou Mo mentioned that He was extremely disgusted with Zhou Mo. It was not easy to erase that person from the deepest part of her heart. Yet Zhou Mo insisted on mentioning that person. It wasn't easy for him to calm his heart. Thinking of this, Xiao Yinyan's expression became even worse. The coldness in his eyes became even more intense. However, the person who was being baptized by this gaze didn't care at all. Even his expression did not change at all. She lifted her lips and met Xiao Yinyan's eyes with a faint smile. The atmosphere was tense. Kitty Lee broke the silence. He's right. We are very good relatives with Big Sister. Big Sister is Kitty's family. We care more about my sister's safety than any of you. She placed her hands on her hips and squeezed between Zhou Mo and Xiao Yinyan. She straightened her body and snorted at Xiao Yinyan. Chapter 3797. We are just worried about Luo. Pei Xing looked at the two people who were at daggers drawn and explained to ease the atmosphere. It's because we know Yuzun's strength that we're worried about Luo. Big Sister is the most powerful person in the world. With Big Sister here, Big Sister can deal with whatever dark honorable or ghost honorable. Kitty Lee opened her big black eyes wide and said with determination. And brother-in-law Overlord is here too. Nothing will happen to my sister. Xiao Yinyan's eyes flickered as he clenched his fists. Pei Xing patted his shoulder and said in a low voice, what they said actually makes sense. Even if we can go to Luo's fiancé's consciousness space, we will only be a burden to Luo. Let's just wait and see. Xiao Yinyan glanced sideways at Pei Xing and pursed his lips into a straight line. He seemed to be unhappy that Pei Xing was speaking up for the person opposite him. Pei Xing rolled her eyes. If you really have other girls in your heart, then don't act like you are deeply in love with Luo. If Luo's fiancé sees your expression and misunderstands, Luo will tear you apart. Xiao Yinyan's face instantly darkened as if he wanted to strangle Pei Xing to death. Pei Xing shrunk her neck. Why are you glaring at me? I'm just thinking about you, Xiao Yinyan gritted his teeth and said in a cold voice. Forget what Zoemo said. From now on don't ever mention it in front of me again. That man. Who? Pei Xing didn't understand, but looking at Xiao Yinyan's expression he seemed to recall something. You mean, the girl in your heart? Why can't I mention it? Are you afraid that I will fall in love with that girl? Don't worry, I know that I can't bully my brother's wife. Shut up. Xiao Yinyan's brows twitched. Pei Xing still wanted to say something. But at this moment a group of profounders started to exclaim with surprise. The two of them immediately shifted their gazes to the sky, to the illusory image. Only to see that in the space of consciousness, there was originally a raging gale, like a huge wave crashing against the astral winds which Yiqing Luo had conjured. It had already changed. The huge waves surged and stirred up a huge wave. It was like a huge mouth that swallowed the girl. That kind of wind and waves was so tyrannical and powerful that no one had ever seen before. It was as if they would be devoured and torn to shreds if they approached it. Such an impact. How could Yiqing Luo possibly block it? Oh no. Madame D has been swallowed. Why isn't Di Zun here? What was going on? Madame D is in trouble. What should we do? Who is that person? What kind of place was the Palace of Darkness? Why are there so many powerful strange things and people? Just like the undead puppet from before. It also looked like the white dragon monster. And the blood fang monster at the back. Now there was another powerful man who could fight the legendary Di Zun alone. This gloom palace. It was too shocking. Look. The Imperial Madam. The Imperial Madam isn't dead. Suddenly, an ecstatic scream erupted from the crowd. A profound practitioner pointed at the horizon and said in a trembling voice, as expected of the Imperial Madam, "She's too scary, too scary." Everyone widened their eyes and looked over. That vast starry sky was shrouded by the hurricane. The raging waves caused the entire space to distort. Chapter 3798. This was not the most shocking thing. What made the cultivators exclaim in shock was, it was under the surging waves. A dazzling red light spread out bit by bit. The red light was dazzling, contending against the waves of air. Following that, a red figure flew out amidst the raging airwaves. The cultivators could even hear the sound of the air being torn apart in the vast starry sky due to the huge energy. That red figure. Wasn't it Yiqing Luo? The young lady opened her arms and flew up. The hand that held the glowing flame fan suddenly unfurled it. The red profound light flowed on the entire glower flame fan. Immediately, it was like a hot knife through butter, tangling with the incoming waves of air. The young lady's beautiful face was emotionless. A pair of charming eyes, calm and indifferent as if facing all these, was just a trivial matter. All the profound practitioners felt as if their hearts had been touched by something. They didn't know why. The moment when the young lady flew up from the surging profound energy which seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth and tear everything apart. In everyone's heart, it had already been imprinted. The young lady's calm as if she could control everything in the world. This was perhaps because right from the start they had treated the young lady as the only hope to leave this auction. Everyone looked at the young lady's fluttering skirt. Their hearts also followed the young lady's, nervously beating wildly. The red light surged wantonly. It formed a confrontation of two forces with that raging wind. A violent boom sound was heard. The entire space shook for a moment. The vast starry sky behind them actually began to shatter piece by piece. The space can't bear the load of these two forces, it's starting to crack. The cultivators exclaimed. Xiao Yinyan took a few steps forward, his pupils constricted. All the muscles in his body were tightened into a ball, as if he wanted to rush into the space of consciousness at any time. Gui Wu's tone was still very indifferent. Don't worry, the Overlord's space of consciousness is not that fragile. Since the Overlord has no intention to make a move, this also means student Yiqing Luo's life is not in danger. Xiao Yinyan clenched his teeth, suppressing the restlessness in his heart. His gaze was fixed on the sky. After the vast starry sky split open, instead there was only darkness. The thick, black, evil aura was not obvious in the darkness. On the contrary, the red glow released by the young girl was like a dancing flame, revealing a bewitching and captivating beauty. In the space of consciousness, Yiqing Luo's eyes were sunken and cold as her gaze seemed to be sealed in ice. Through the layers of surging profound waves, she looked at Yuzun, whose face was distorted and sinister. She curled her lips into a faint, cold smile. Her 5 fingers moved slightly, about to form the thundercrash incantation. Suddenly, Old Man Song's alarmed voice entered her ears. "Girl, don't use the thunderclap arts and the secret teleportation technique for now." Yiqing Luo's movements paused. Old Man Song's voice was somewhat sullen. "This old man feels that someone is spying on us. No, it's spying on the entire battlefield." When Yiqing Luo heard that, the hand which had already stretched out slowly retracted. The burning aura around his body also retracted a little. "What do you mean?" she asked. Old Man Song sighed softly. "This old man can't explain it clearly, but I have this feeling. A very strong feeling of being spied on. Under the situation where we don't know who the other party is, if you use the thunderclap arts or the secret teleportation technique, your secret will most likely be exposed." Yiqing Luo's slender brows instantly creased into a ball. Chapter 3799. Why did it feel as though he was intentionally targeting her? Yiqing Luo's expression congealed as she raised her eyes towards Yuzun's direction. Yuzun saw her retract her move, and her anger had also subsided. His face revealed a sinister cold smile. Yiqing Luo? Why did you stop? Are you afraid?" Seeing Yuzun's delighted look, linking back to what Old Man Song said, looked like the feeling of being spied on by Old Man Song was real. Her eyes were filled with a chilly glint as she looked at Yuzun and asked word by word, "You're the one behind this?" Yuzun laughed sinisterly. "Huh. I didn't expect you to discover it." His tone was filled with disappointment and mixed with complacency. Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly. The person hiding in the dark, is he the real mastermind of Palace of Darkness? The person who could spy on Dmo Xian's consciousness space? Other than that mysterious and powerful mastermind of Palace of Darkness, Yiqing Luo couldn't think of anyone else. Moreover, other than the mastermind of Palace of Darkness, no one would do such a sneaky rat's action. Yuzun's expression was twisted as he sneered. "To deal with you, there's no need for esteemed father to take action personally." "Esteemed father?" Yiqing Luo raised her brows in astonishment. "You're the mastermind of Palace of Darkness." No wonder Yuji addressed him as esteemed young master. Yuzun revealed a complacent look. His disheveled look made him put on a high-spirited look. "Why are you afraid?" Yiqing Luo replied decisively as her pink lips curled into an arc. "I just feel that it's very funny." Yuzun's expression sunk. "What's funny?" Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her eyes were filled with ridicule as she gave a sarcastic smile. "To me, the real mastermind behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness has always been considered as my acknowledged opponent. Tisk, I'd not expected that his son is actually a useless trash." As she said that, she shook her head as she pretended to sigh helplessly. "I really feel sorry for that esteemed father of yours." Yuzun's face contorted in anger as his face was filled with humiliation. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as a burst of powerful profound energy erupted from his entire body, causing his robe and hair to flutter wildly. Obviously he was angry out of humiliation. Just as Yiqing Luo congealed her eyes and was about to receive his attack, suddenly, a weak wave of air swayed in the air. The flames around the Nether Prime immediately dissipated completely. The Nether Prime was stunned on the spot. His face was filled with disbelief, shock, and astonishment. Yiqing Luo frowned when she saw this. She wasn't sure if it was just her imagination. It seemed like there was a very familiar feeling in that weak wave of air just now. The air seemed to freeze for a moment. It was as if it was the feeling of hearing something that disturbed the mind. What words? She had only mocked Yuzun a little. Why does the Dark Lord seem like he can't use his strength? In the time it took to breathe, the Nether Prime's horrified aura seemed to be forcefully suppressed. What was going on? The Nether Prime was equally confused and shocked. He clenched his fists so tightly that his veins were bulging. His ferocious face was covered with blue veins. What was going on? Why did his profound energy completely disappear just now? That wave of air which suppressed his attack earlier. It felt extremely familiar. The Nether Prime's eyes flashed as a figure surfaced in his heart. Chapter 3800. Yuzun's heart suddenly trembled fiercely. But following that he was filled with doubts. Only Yiqing Luo apparently didn't give him a chance to think deeply. Seeing the flames around Yuzun dissipating without any intention to battle, she naturally wouldn't let go of this chance. Her lips curled as she leapt up and opened up both her hands. Since you don't intend to attack, then it's my turn to take control. She raised her slender wrist, and when the glower flame fan opened up, endless profound energy surged out. At the same time, her cold voice reverberated in the sky. My little friends, come out and do some exercise. Following Yiqing Luo's words, a huge green dragon appeared in the sky, surging in the pitch-black space. Its entire body shone with green light, dignified and noble. The dragon's roar shook the entire space. A huge white tiger suspended in midair. Its 4 paws were burning with raging flames. A pair of black tiger eyes stared menacingly at Yuzun. That king word on its forehead was shocking. Immediately following that, a huge vermilion bird spread its wings, giving off a sharp and clear cry. Its fiery red wings, overflowing with brilliant colors, dazzling the entire pitch-black space. Under the 4 huge sacred beasts, a black cheetah whose entire body was pitch black, its eyes glinting with a dangerous cold glint, arched its body as its fur stood up, like a sharp blade, extremely sharp. The moment this formation appeared, the entire empty space instantly became bustling with noise and excitement. A powerful and thick pressure enveloped everything in the surroundings. This 4 sacred beasts, in addition to a cheetah beast's powerful pressure, was close to a spirit profound cultivator. Yuzun was so shocked that he almost couldn't stand still. He recognized the 4 different battle beasts hovering in midair at one glance. They were the ancient 4 great sacred beasts. This lady called Yiqing Luo had actually subdued the 4 great sacred beasts. He was extremely regretting that in order to let his Lord Father value him more, he didn't investigate clearly and forcefully accepted this mission. This lady was simply not human. Totally not as harmless as she looked on the surface. It seemed like he was just a newbie who had come from the Nirvana realm to the Earth realm, and even the Sage Profound realm should be considered a beginner. Who would have thought that, time and time again, he would be shocked and overwhelmed with shock? It was as if all the good things in the world had gathered on her. The Dark Lord's fists clenched even tighter. Trash. As the beast roared and the hurricane raged, the wind howled. The Nether Prime seemed to have vaguely heard an enraged bellow by his ears. This voice caused the Nether Lord to suddenly wake up. His eyes widened as he looked around. His heart was filled with excitement and shock. However, he did not have time to search for the owner of the voice. The raging winds and huge waves set off by the 4 sacred beasts were already pressing down on them. 4 holy beasts and a mutated phantom beast with a dragon horn. Each beast had its own unique attack. They were entangled from all directions. The Nether Prime did not have any leeway to retaliate at all. The 5 battle pets were pressing down with an unstoppable momentum. The Nether Prime's heart had sunk into despair. Suddenly, a hurricane stirred up a monstrous black chi as it enveloped his body. The slight wave of chi that was suppressing his entire body's chi suddenly dissipated. Boundless energy gathered in his limbs and bones. The Nether Prime didn't have the time to be surprised. Where did this amusing change come from?